Hello and welcome to the Mutual Fund Show. I'm Latha Venkatesh, sitting in for Sumaira Abdi. While we have all been welcoming the goddess of wealth and the puja, the Diwali puja, on Saturday, November 14th is also Children's Day. And on the MF show, we thought we should celebrate both children and the concept of wealth, and hence the Mutual Fund Children's Show. What are we trying to explore today is how to teach children the concept of wealth and savings. When and how do we teach them about mutual funds, debt mutual funds, equity mutual funds? We'll try to cover all questions that may occur to parents for the ages of 8 to 18, if possible more. And joining me are two experts. Jyotsana Singh, the Senior Executive Director at Kotak Wealth Management. This is a private wealth manager with the largest AUM. And Hansi Mehrotra, the founder of The Money Hans, largely a content, a website that provides a lot of information on money for children as well. Hansi and Jyotsana, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Well, Jyotsana, let me start with you. You know, at what age does one introduce the concept of money, savings and investments to children? What would you do on Diwali Day, for instance?
I think, for starters, thanks a lot, Latha. Pleasure to be on the show. It's a very interesting question and a rather thought-provoking one, if I may say so. I believe no age is early enough to start this whole concept of talking to children about money and finance. And let me try and answer this by asking a question. Do we have conversations with our children around God? This Diwali, at Lakshmi Puja, will we not include our children in the puja and explain to them the concept of Goddess Lakshmi, the fact that she's the goddess of wealth and prosperity, and that we all worship her and welcome her into our homes wholeheartedly because we all want to be prosperous? So I suspect that the answer is a most definite yes. And if that is the case, then my next question is that why should we shy away from talking to children at a young age about money and money matters? In fact, I think it's extremely important for parents and family members to have very frank and honest conversations with children about this, because what they pick up from home will probably be well understood in the right context, in the right perspective, trying to understand the importance of money or the relevance of money in the overall scheme of things. So clearly, contrary to some belief, that money matters should not be discussed with children, I think this is a subject which should not be taboo. It should be discussed. And I also believe that it's really important to teach children the value of money. The fact that money doesn't grow on trees at all.
Yeah.
And therefore, I would just sort of summarize by saying that there are 4 important pillars on which parents can sort of lay the foundation of this conversation to be initiated with children. The first one, a very important concept of earning, followed by saving, then spending, and last, but by no means the least, that of giving.
Okay. All right, that's important, giving as well. Okay, Hansi, children would learn, at least when I was a child, we would learn the concept of money because mother would say that she has, dad has given 1,000 rupees for this month and there is only this much available. You would have conversations about how I won't spend this month because there's some other expense. But, life has come by and now food is not such a big expense. There is enough. So you children don't get the idea that there is limited money like we got when we were children. But things have changed. So how do you introduce the concept that there is only this much money and you have to save and only then spend?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Latha, for inviting me to the show and for this question. I'm actually making a show right now for women and money. And it doesn't really apply to women only, it applies to everyone. But as you said, we all remember what we were told in our childhood. So I think, and we carry that message right through our lives. It actually shapes us as people. And as you said, because we were from a generation of scarcity, we probably, all of us are similar age, we probably carry that with us. Whereas the new generation is an era of abundance, and therefore they perhaps don't value the value of money as much. But having said that, I think that's we're looking at people like us. So I think if you look at the 70-80% of India that doesn't have that choice, I think we can't really speak for them. And also, I think with too much abundance also comes choices. And I think they do have to learn sort of differentiating between needs and wants. So as you said, food, the dal chawal roti might be need, but when they want to go out all the time, that's a want. I also think that when our parents used to say there's not enough money, I was actually interviewing a woman recently, a guest of mine, and she actually said that we kind of assumed it was a lie. Like, parents are just saying that to us to make us feel guilty. And there was enough money. They just said that. That guest has carried that throughout her life. And she kind of has that mentality. So I just think you've got to be careful about making flippant comments like that, because you just never know what their kids will carry.
Hansi, since you're the content provider, I want to know, how do you now teach the concept of savings? In my childhood, we were given a piggy bank. But now coins and notes are out of fashion. Children know about credit cards and, the non-currency money very quickly. How do you change your content providing? In fact, now, I guess in a few years, UPI or electronic transfer will be very common. How do you teach children then how to save?
I think you start with very young children. You still teach them about coins and notes just so they get the idea of numbers. But as my 3.5-year-old, when I made a show called Money Talks with Hansi, where we put a coin on a guy's head, and literally money was talking. The 3-year-old found that fascinating. But now he is sort of 8, 9, and now he gets the concept that there's money in the bank. It's a number in the bank, and that's okay. They get that. What my dad used to do, 30 years ago, 35 years ago, he used to give us a set amount, and then he used to say at the end of the month, whatever you have left over, I will double it. But then that goes into the bank and gets invested. So I think you can graduate from the physical notes and coins to the concept that there's money in the bank, that there's a number that it needs to keep increasing. So I think that kids, as you said, are savvy enough to pick that up, and I think we can play on that.
Coming back to money, Jyotsana, how would you teach children the concept of saving and spending? I'll come to debt and investments in just a minute, because that, I guess, is for a slightly older child. But this is a great idea that Hansi is talking about, that if there is so much money left at the end of the month, I'll double it for you. Any ideas how you teach children saving?
When we talk of saving, I think what is equally important is to teach them the discipline of saving. So saving should not be really taught as a one-time or a one-off kind of habit. In fact, it's something that needs to be inculcated, and it should be, just sort of part and parcel of your DNA, so to say. I think Warren Buffett has very wisely said, do not save what is left after spending. Instead, spend what is left after saving. And I think, this pretty much sums it all in terms of, your whole approach to sort of saving and spending. So it's a mantra, I believe, that will hold any one of us, let alone children, in good stead in life. And it should be inculcated from a young age, and children should be encouraged to save, say, a small percentage of their pocket money or the monthly allowance. Now with Diwali around the corner, maybe there's children who are going to receive some kharchi or blessings in the form of an envelope or something. So it may not be, it would in fact be a good time for children to actually start the process of saving something out of the monies that they receive. And I think Hansi also made a very nice point in terms of, I'll double it for you.
This is a great lesson you're giving us, as you said, not just for children, that you must spend after you save and not save what remains after you spend. A great lesson. But we're going to take a break and come back with the more serious questions. How do you introduce and when do you introduce the concept of investments? What is the difference between debt and equity and the power of compounding? From two experts, we are coming back in just a minute. Welcome back to the Children's Special Mutual Fund. I've been speaking with Hansi Mehrotra, the founder of the Money Hands, and Jyotsana Singh, the Senior Executive Director at Kotak Wealth Management. Well, ladies, thank you very much for your patience. We've been discussing how to teach children younger than teenagers the concept of money, but now we get to the teenagers where we have to explain more important and sophisticated concepts. Jyotsana, how would you explain to them first the difference between debt and equity and the idea of investments?
Sure. So let me just start off by saying that, when we were growing up, debt was truly considered to be a four-letter word. And in fact, in many countries, they used to draw a parallel from the age-old snakes and ladder game. And, the snake, of course, depicting debt, just sort of ready to trap you in, so to say. But today the perspective has changed, right? And, taking off home loans, car loans, personal loans, etc., is really not frowned upon. So debt is really not a bad thing. In fact, I'd say today, if somebody decides to buy a house and takes a home loan for that, and sort of says that it's a smarter thing for me to do, for me to actually pay an EMI, an equated monthly installment, rather than pay a monthly rent to a landlord, and maybe in addition take benefits of some of the tax stops that the government gives. This, in fact, is considered to be a good sort of financial decision. But debt can be a double-edged sword and very worthy if it's taken for some asset creation, like a home loan that we just spoke about, or maybe your children's education going forward, etc. But where you don't want to be is in the space of a debt trap. And if I can just take a minute to recount one of the stories that I grew up on, hearing my father always tell us, and he always said, and this was all about, don't get caught in the trap of compulsive purchases, etc. And he used to say, whenever you're going out shopping, draw up a list. And on that list, even if you have an elephant, go out and get it. But don't even buy a pin if it's not there on your list. So I think the importance of, sticking the course and needs versus wants, etc.
Oh, that's a very useful lesson you're giving us, while we should tell children that debt comes with some advantages of tax breaks as well as creation of assets, we should not. We should also warn them against the debt trap. Now, let me come to the positive part, Hansi. How do you teach the principle of compounding? The positive aspect of savings.
So I started a mutual fund in a sort of insurance tax wrapper. This is not here. This is in Australia, so it's not the same as the Indian one. But I've been telling my kid that I've been investing X amount on his birthday every year on this thing. And I've been telling him how it's growing. So every year on his birthday, I have this conversation with him about how it's grown. I put in this much, but it's grown to this much. And he asked, how does it grow? I do think that that the debt and equity conversation could be had at a much basic level. Let's leave tax out of it for smaller kids, because tax will change. So start with the conversation about maybe a friend borrowing money from you, right? You've gone to the movies and they've fallen short or something like that. And so you can give them the money, but giving is not ever giving. It's either debt or equity, or it's a gift. I mean, gift aside, it's debt or equity. If it's debt, if you're lending it to him, how will he give it back? Will you ask him that question? So I actually made a whole series. It's called Fast Finance, where in 1 minute, I draw a doodly video on explaining this concept. Now there I've used investing in companies. So I've said, for example, my brother is opening a restaurant and he wants some money from me, and I'm the good sister and I want to give him the money. But how do I do that? So I can either lend it to him, in which case I want to know what his cash flow is, how will he give it back, what assets he has in case the restaurant doesn't work, and so on. And then there's a thing of, if I invest equity, that means I can never ask for it back. Okay, I participate in the profits and losses, and he decides how to run it, how to expand it, how to whatever. I cannot tell him as a backseat driver what to do. So that's the concept. I made it for adults, but I think something like that would be useful for kids as well.
I want to ask you, Jyotsana, at what point when you as a private wealth manager speak with families, how do you involve children, not children, really teenagers, probably children who are 18, 20, or almost on the verge of earning, when parents are planning their debt and investment combos?
So actually, we run certain programs where we do sort of call in the next gen or the younger lot of the families that we're working with. And we do have a lot of interesting conversations with them regarding money matters, etc. But I think, I sort of want to add on to the whole concept of compounding, because I think this is a subject which is truly underestimated. And again, I will sort of quote Einstein here when he said that the power of compound interest is like the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. Right. And let me just, I always find that it's well understood with the help of an example. And so let's just imagine we have 100 rupees as capital, and there's an interest rate of 10% available. In a sort of simple interest scenario, you will end up earning 10% on 100, which is 10 rupees for the first year. Similarly, you will again earn another 10 rupees for the second year, and also another 10 rupees for the third year. Whereas in the world of compound interest, which incidentally is the well-established sort of concept and accepted in the world, in the financial services world, etc., what will happen is you'll earn 10 rupees in the first year, taking up your sort of base capital to 110. But in the second year, you'll earn 10% on 110, which makes it actually an earning of 11 rupees. Oh. And that, sort of takes your base capital to 121. And then you earn 10% on that. Yes. And that's actually, so you'll end up in a 3-year period ending 100 growing to 133.1. Vis-a-vis 100 growing to 130. Fair point. Now, one way of looking at it is saying, obviously this is a simple mathematical example, but one way of looking at it is saying it's just 3 rupees difference, but the other way of looking at it, it's a 10% difference. Absolutely. 130 versus 133.
Well, so, actually we are running out of time, so Hansi, the last question to you. What will be the do's and don'ts you will give an 18-year-old, almost crossing over from teens? And my first question, which is also a very personal question, when do you tell them your salary?
Oh, gosh, assuming you have a salary. What if you're a business person? So I think in your late teens probably is a conversation. I think they pick it up. As I'm going around interviewing my guests for the upcoming show, which is with women, I have asked them, like, when did you have the conversation at the dinner table about how much they earned? And most of them said they were never told. Okay. And this is a conversation that should be had, not exact numbers. I think that is impolite, because kids will probably tell other friends and stuff. Yes. That's what they say, but I think ballpark, they can pick it up anyway in terms of what you're able to spend. Okay. And especially at the private bank that I'm advising, they are very careful. They ask the same question: should we even tell our kids that we are really rich? Because then they take money for granted. Okay. So I think kids, maybe parents should be a bit more careful about telling them too much about their finances. Yeah, I go with that line, that don't tell them too much at that point until they get to the point where they can understand that until their values are already formed. Okay. You do not want to give them too much money or tell them that you're too rich while they are still building their values. Once they're formed, I think, like I said, maybe late teens, early 20s and stuff. In terms of the do's and don'ts, I'd say in terms of debt, only take it on to build an asset. So I would teach them what an asset is, which is like a cash cow, something that gives you money. I think explaining that is very important. And everything else, so for example, buying a car, things like that, money only ever flows out. That's a liability. An asset, a house, can give you rent in future. And education will give you more salary in future or more income in future. They're the only two things I encourage debt for. Everything else, I sort of say, you are making a conscious choice to pay more because you are going to pay interest. So, yeah, I wouldn't encourage that.
All right. That's a very useful concept to tell our children. Thank you very much, Hansi and Jyotsana, for preparing the parents who are watching to integrate the goddess of wealth with Children's Day. That's it on this edition of the Children's Special of the Mutual Fund Show.